Well, we're disking this up today. This field we're gonna try not to plow this year. There's really no need to. It was all soybeans last year, except a little bit of corn right down there and running through the middle. My plan is to do a lot of soybeans, and then with it, where he is right now with the tractor, that corner is up there is gonna be brassica. But seems to be working up pretty good. I know there's a lot of weeds in here. And disc it up obviously the day we plant. So pretty loose ground. It works up pretty easily out here. Sandy loam, not really a clay type ground at all. In the past we've always plowed this, pretty much all of our food plots. We tried disking this, just disking it this year. It should be fine. All right, so right behind me here, this is our approximately 1.2 acre food plot. I call it the Field of Dreams. Anyways, this food plot was primarily soybeans last year. You can see the areas it was corn last year. I had corn in the middle here separating that side from this side. Then I had corn down here in front of the deer blind right here. And you can see it's pretty dark ground. This year, it's gonna be primarily soybeans, no corn at all. I'll have brassicas basically from about where my finger is over. Be like a rectangle of brassicas up in that corner right there. Everything comes out on this corner right here. Last year I had beans up there and the weeds got pretty tall, and it's nice to be able to look down into that corner. You know, when you're hunting out of this elevated blind right here, you can't really see it behind the buckthorn. Anyways, like I said, this ground is pretty dark, especially up in this corner right here. So I've had troubles growing soybeans in the past. On this darker ground in our property here, the iron chlorosis, many of you probably have never even heard of that. IDC, or iron chlorosis in soybeans, is pretty severe. It basically hinders the growth for almost the whole growing season. As soon as they get a couple leaves on, they start to turn yellow, and I guess the plant just can't get all the iron I guess it needs. I'm not an expert or anything, but all I know is it definitely, I've noticed it in a couple of lower ground plots like this. I should mention I'm gonna put 3 bags of fertilizer on this field. Not nearly as much as I have in the past, but since it's beans I have to fertilize, because if they're gonna have a fertilizer issue and iron chlorosis issue, the weeds are just going to take over, and it's just going to be a big weedy mess. So on this lower ground, I've heard what you can do to make the iron chlorosis not as bad is you can seed oats as a companion crop, because you're supposed to seed thicker in these areas too, but the oats will act as basically like weeds too. And then once they get about 6 to 8 inches tall, you spray. You could probably even wait till they get about closer to 10 to 12 inches, but then by that time it'll be starting to choke out the weeds. But basically, the more roots you have, the more live roots you have growing in the soil, the less of an IDC or iron chlorosis issue you have. So that's why in this lower ground here, I'll be planting oats. These are all gonna be broadcasted soybeans. In the past couple of years, I haven't broadcasted soybeans in this field for many years now, at least probably 3 or 4 years. The reason why I'm doing it that way is because it's so much faster. You can get them just as thick, they grow just as good, and there won't be any corn in this field this year, so I'll just broadcast everything. I'll be broadcasting the rye too, I'll be broadcasting the rye and the fertilizer with my earth waste seeder, but the soybeans I'll just throw out by hand with a bucket. right, so here we are. Last night I fertilized 4 bags, 2 bags of the potash 0060 and 2 bags of the 92331, which has phosphorus and potassium and a little bit of nitrogen. 4 bags total. Like I said, I got 1 spot out there with no fertilizer, and I'll have 1 spot down here with no oats. Last night, as you saw, I disked it in. I just did a little test spot. I haven't broadcasted soybeans out here for a couple years. It's pretty loose ground, so I feel like if I disc them in, it might put a lot of them too deep. I just did a little quick test right here with the drag, threw a few beans out, and pretty much got 90 to 95% coverage on 1 pass with the drag. All right, so here we are. I'm not sure how many days this is after. It's June 1st today. You can see all the oats are coming up along with the soybeans. You can really see the packed lines where the tires were from the ATV. That's probably why it's kind of in strips. Maybe the drag kind of pushed the seed in lines too, but anyways, you can see all these soybeans coming up along with all the rye, and then underneath that is a whole bunch of weeds too. Those are all weeds. Yeah, the soybeans look pretty good. I mean, maybe certain areas are a little bit thin. I guess there's bean here. There's one that didn't germinate. Not everything was covered, but there's definitely plenty of soybeans in here. Hopefully I can get a good kill on all these weeds. A lot of this is all that water hemp and pigweed and just really Roundup resistant weeds. I think this is lamb's quarters too. Really hard to kill weeds. I'll probably spray all this. The oats are going to obviously grow a little faster than the beans. Are already up and above them a little bit, but probably spray all this when the oats are like 8 to 10 inches tall. And then you can see here's my little section right here on the edge where I didn't seed oats in this darker ground. Right about here, this is going to be brass because this is nothing. This is all weeds right here. But you can see all the soybeans coming up. And then, so we'll see how much better those beans look for iron chlorosis. I'm expecting this edge without the oats to definitely be yellower. They always come up and look really fine like this, but then once they get a couple leaves on, then they start to turn yellow for some reason the last couple years in this darker ground. I'll take you up here in the drier section. We'll take a look at the beans up here. Lots of weeds coming. Same types of weeds over here too. The beans aren't super thick. You know, a little thin is usually better than a little too thick. Because if you have them too thick, then they really, you know, this is looking good. I think it's a good amount of, it's not too thin, it's not too thick, but it definitely could have a few, it's a little bit on the thin side in some of this area up here. I know this drier section, I definitely seeded a little bit thinner, but then you can see there's a thick spot right here. I think the drag must have pushed some of them around a little bit. Well, you can see a whole bunch of them there. You know, nothing. I guess there's one there, one here. So I'm looking in here. It's looking pretty good. It's not too thin really, so they should fill in pretty nicely. It's hard to see with the glare, but you'll see in the next update they should be quite a bit bigger. All right, so here we are, right about a week after I sprayed. You can see all the oats. The other side is the drier side, which I had sprayed previously, and then this is what I sprayed last weekend, last Sunday, or maybe it was Saturday. But anyways, now you can really see what I'm working with here. From a distance, it looks good. All you can see is beans, but you get in here and look closer, and there's a lot of, see how big that water hemp plant is? And then you got these smaller ones, then you got all these little ones. Now this is one of the worst spots in the field right here. For some reason, there's just a ton of water hemp here. There is like a bunch of small ones here, but you get in here maybe where there's more oats and there's less water hemp, but there's all these lamb's quarters plants. Those are all weeds that are dying, and some of them have survived, a very few amount. But it seems like the oats helped suppress the water hemp, but in certain areas you get in here, like right here, there wasn't that many oats. You can see oats here, and there's water hemp right here, but then again there is water hemp right here mixed amongst the oats. Probably there's a bad patch right here of water hemp. You can see the main reason why I was trying to put these oats down is to help with the iron chlorosis. You can see some of the plants are starting to show that those symptoms of iron chlorosis, yellowing on the leaves and kind of slowed growth. I kind of figured that would maybe happen once I sprayed off all that living root, because the more living roots you have in the ground, the less severe the iron chlorosis is going to be. For some reason, the plants just can't access the iron in the soil, and it just really slows their growth. You can see they're already starting to turn the classic symptoms, like that yellowy, grainy look. But yeah, there is quite a few weeds in here. I have been pulling some here and there. You can see right here's a nice, strong, sturdy plant. It hasn't been nipped off. There's been quite a bit of deer browse in this whole field. You can see this one got nipped off right above the cotyledon and is somewhat still alive, but he's really delayed in growth. And then you got other ones like this that have gotten nipped off, you know, at a different stage of growth. This one's a little bit more rigid and probably will have a better chance of sprouting back than like this little tiny thing. But overall, looks okay. I got a pretty good population of beans in here. The canopy should close relatively quickly if these beans don't get too yellow and slow down in their growth, but there is going to be quite a bit of weeds in here in certain areas. But like right here, I'm happy with what it looks like right here. Hardly any weeds, but there's just a few patches in here. Might have been patches of water hemp that were really bad last year and dropped a whole bunch of seed. Like this patch right up here where I just started the video. Look at all these weeds right here. You can see up in this drier section here, these beans probably look a little bit healthier. Still getting browsed quite a bit. You can see right here, you know, all these trying to resprout back. I don't get it because there's a big bean field right out there on the neighbors, probably like a 10-acre field. And then that way there's about 20 acres of beans. I know there's beans up and over the hill that way and another 20, 30 acres. And there's beans across the road like another 10, 15 acres. So I don't understand why we're getting so much browse pressure this year. Maybe there's just more deer now or something. But I know 2 years ago when that was the bean field and that was a bean field and those were bean fields over there, same scenario, everything, you know, rotates. There was hardly a deer in this plot at all. I never even saw maybe 1 or 2 beans that got nipped off, hardly any. But now, this year, they're really hitting them hard for some reason. I think they'd be, you know, with all these beans around, you think it would kind of balance out. I mean, they're doing fine, but it's kind of frustrating when they get nipped off right below the cotyledon and then they die. See, I got a couple isolated big water hemp plants out here. It's going to be hard to, I mean, quite a few actually when you start looking. Kind of sucks. And you got all this young lamb's quarters coming in. And these beans, they're kind of thick, but they're kind of patchy too. You know, you got a big opening right here, big opening right here. So it's gonna be a while before this canopy's closed. So I'm thinking this weekend, I hate to do it, but I'm gonna have to come in here and spray again. But I don't know if I'm even gonna kill any of this. I sprayed this 2 weeks ago. That section down there is what I sprayed last weekend. So you can see all the dead stuff. These might be all Roundup resistant, but I gotta at least try. Otherwise, I'm gonna end up with literally 5 and 6 foot weeds everywhere in these beans because there's just big gaps in here. They didn't come in quite as thick up here. Maybe I just didn't throw them in as thick as I did down in that lower section. I think that's what it is. But anyways, yeah, just kind of sucks. But I mean, it looks pretty good. You can see there's plenty of beans out here. It's gonna be a heck of a winter food source. But I just want to get the most as I possibly can out of this not even 1 acre plot right here. That's all buckwheat coming up over there, that different color of green. Those will all be no-till brassicas sometime in July or August. But you can see as thick as what it is right here. Too bad it wasn't like this throughout the whole plot, because you can see this canopy is about ready to close pretty soon here. Some deer browse right here. That ain't bad. Once they get about this big, they can handle a lot of browse because they're not going to chomp off all that material. They're going to just take off a leaf or two at a time and then keep the growing point alive. But yeah, some bigger weeds out here, and if you pull these out, you can't just leave them like that because these water hemp plants, they'll just start growing right into the soil after a rain. And we got rain in the forecast tomorrow, so yeah, I'm gonna have to come in here and try and get rid of some of these small weeds. Maybe pull out a few of the big ones, but all right, so standing right in the center of this 1 acre broadcasted bean plot. This is like one little thin spot right in the middle, but man, it looks pretty darn good so far. Over there by the deer stand, that's that wetter side that I seeded the oats into. You can see it's yellow from here. That's the iron chlorosis effect on the beans. But usually once they get about knee high, which they're almost there now, I can already see some of them are starting to recover from it. And then this is the drier side. Here's that thin patch. The beans down basically from here over are the best looking beans in the whole field. Some of this is pretty good too, but I believe I put 4, actually, I don't even remember anymore. I think it was maybe even 6 bags of fertilizer on this 1 acre. There is some weeds in here, obviously, water hemp. There's some really bad patches of it, like right out there. And here, I'll show you this quick before I walk down to the other end. But like right here, you know, there's just really nice and thick, no water hemp really. And then you get over here, there's some thinner spots and lots and lots of water hemp. I mean, if I don't pull these out, they're gonna end up like 5 or 6 feet tall. I've been trying to pull out some, maybe just some of the bigger plants, but in some of these areas, it's just too much. I mean, look at it all. Look at it right here. That's gonna severely reduce the yield of all these beans right here. So it's basically just a patch of weeds. And then up there, this is looking better right here. A little bit less weeds. These thin patches, I don't know if I just missed throwing this little tiny spot here, a little spot there, or when I was using the drag, it seemed like the drag pulled those seeds and kind of spread them around a little bit more. I should have probably just disked them in instead of using the ATV drag, but it turned out. And then this is the buckwheat up here on this end. The buckwheat's actually outgrowing the weeds, like outpacing the weeds. That's insane. There's a lot of lamb's quarters in there, but it doesn't really look like it anymore. This stuff is literally growing faster than weeds. That's pretty amazing. I'll do no-till brassicas into that sometime here in July, maybe early August. But show you a quick look at this end of the field. Definitely shorter, not as healthy of looking plants, but it looks like they're starting to overcome the chlorosis. The newer growth is darker green. You can still see all the old oats in here. It actually looks like they're really, surprisingly, there's not as much water hemp in this area. The oats might have helped hold back the water hemp a little bit, but there definitely is some plants down in here. I mean, look at this one. But I think those bad patches of it are just areas where, you know, there was a couple really big plants, or a big patch of it last year too. It dropped a whole bunch of seeds down into the soybeans last year. But yeah, there's some patches down here too. Look at all this patch right here of water hemp. All this darker green stuff is water hemp. And then the soybeans on this far end, yeah, wow, there's a lot of water hemp right here too. And these soybeans aren't looking the best down here, but they'll grow something. But I think from now on, I'm gonna try and just maybe put corn for the next 2 years, at least down on this wetter side. These beans are really kind of suffering a little bit, but not too bad, I guess. But I'm gonna take you down to the other end of the field now. That's the best looking stuff. All right, not quite to the other end of the field yet, but this is probably one of the worst patches of water hemp in here. It's just everywhere, and the beans are a little bit thinner here, so that's not really good either. But yeah, I think definitely next year, this is gonna be about half corn, half beans, and everything's gonna be on 38-inch rows. The beans too, and I'll just have to, you know, get them rows nice and thick, and then just cultivate. Still spray once to clean up the weeds inside the rows where I can't cultivate, but literally 3 passes with the cultivator is gonna help clean up a lot of these small weeds that are Roundup resistant. So I won't be able to get them nice and thick, and they won't canopy over fast, but they should canopy over eventually, especially in this better dirt. Down there in that wetter ground, they probably won't ever canopy over at 38, but you can see they're nice and bushy up here already. These leaves are pretty big, but down here a little bit is it's even better than this. All right, these are all about knee-high beans right here, July 9th. This is the best section of the field. Probably is the driest section, which is kind of odd, but some of those, you know, this is all pretty good dirt, but it's not super dry. But man, look at this. These leaves are absolutely huge, literally as big as my whole palm. Let me pull that leaf off. I'm not sure what type of variety these are. These are just harvested beans from a farmer that we know. But definitely, I think I put 6 bags of fertilizer on this field. And then right here is the neighbor's agricultural bean field. And if you look at these leaves, look at the size difference. That's like a whole leaf right there. And this one's as big as all 3. And the whole field's like that. I mean, their field's nice and thick. I mean, that's pretty much canopy closure already. Really good all the way through. Unlike my field where it's kind of spotty and tons of weeds, but these plants in my, I mean, this is the same exact ground. I mean, look at it right there compared to right here. And look at the difference. It's unbelievable. These beans are taller. They're at a thinner population, and they're already canopied over. Just as good, if not a little bit better in some of those areas than what that field is. I mean, these leaves are just huge. Here's another example right here. This is the 3 that we just looked at over here. Well, right here, this is the 3 leaves from the other field, and here's one from my field on this end here. I mean, the difference is just astronomical. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what would be causing that. I mean, I'm sure they fertilize a little bit, maybe not 6 bags to the acre, but this being a tilled up field, these beans were actually planted probably a week to a week and a half after they planted that field. And whenever you no-till, you know, the soil always stays colder. And we didn't plow it this year, but we disked this down twice. You know, so it pretty much looked like we plowed after we disked a couple times. Pretty loose, sandy loam soil here. And just getting the soil all worked up, I think just gave these beans a jump start. And whatever they spray on those fields is pretty tough, you know, pretty rough on the beans, because I think that kind of has something to do with stunting them too. Because sometimes if you look in farmers' fields, you'll see the top leaves all shriveled up and kind of like curled up a little bit from like the stronger herbicides they use. I just, you know, I'm spraying glyphosate. This is pretty mild comparing to all the stuff that they have, like dicamba and all the different really strong sprays that kill water hemp, because glyphosate obviously ain't killing it. But right here, this looks pretty good. There's a little bit less water hemp in the field here, a little bit drier. Right here's a couple. But man, these beans, I would really like to know what these are going to yield, but probably just as good, if not better, than the acre right here in the next door. But there is some thin spots in here. If everything looked, the whole field looked like is what this looks like right here, that would be insane. But can't be that good. But I'm surprised these deer, they were browsing on these really hard for a while, but now they're just too far ahead. I'm hardly seeing any browse on this field right now. But you can see these plants, you know, they're putting on plenty of branches and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what these things look like come end of August. They'll be definitely waist high right here in that wetter section down there. They probably won't be. Anyways, yeah, thanks for watching. Horseflies are starting to come out now, just that time of year. Yeah, got a few more corn and beans videos to get out. Well, probably a lot more, but anyways, yeah, thanks for watching.